Hey everyone, my name is Pavel and I'm an Android native software engineer at MATTR. Today I'm going to show you how to issue a mobile credential and securely store it on your device using our beautiful SDK. You'll see that it can be actually done just in 2 SDK calls, but we're going to build a simple application just for you to have an idea about where to place the calls and how to surface the data to the user. I assume that you already know what the mobile credentials are and what an OpenID for VCI is. If you don't, better fix it before watching further. You can find the literature at our great MATTR Learn platform that has an extensive description of all of the technical details related to mobile credentials, their issuance, storage and presentation, and much more. The link to MATTR Learn is at the description of the video. I'm also sure that you know what's the view model and how to use it, what's clean architecture, what architectural approaches are recommended by Google, and what layers you need to have on your app. None of this will be actually applied today. We're not building a product-grade app today, but we will build the simplest possible application to receive and store the credentials. Cool, I can feel that you're ready to start the tutorial, so let's go to the code. I've prepared some foundation for the app that we're gonna build. To keep this video fun, I skip the boring parts such as setting up the Gradle stuff. But before you start integrating our SDKs to your app, have a look at the detailed text tutorial that I carefully prepared for you. It shows how to connect our SDK to your great application, and it also contains a step-by-step thorough guide that will help you to build an application very similar to what we're building here. Link is in the description. So finally the code. As you can see, we currently have kind of a skeleton of our future application. First, the navigation structure. We will have 3 screens, which are home or main, a scan of a screen that will mainly contain a QR scanner for the credential offer, and retrieve credential screen where you'll be able to look at the received credential. Home screen currently just has a button saying scan credential offer. This button will navigate the user to scan offer screen. Now have a look at these constants. These are OpenID values that will be different for you. As OpenID for VCI is an auth-protected technology, you will have an authorization server that needs this data to correctly recognize the request and to redirect the user back to the app or to a website when the workflow is finished. By the way, we can help you with setting this up. Go to MATTR Learn using the link in the description to read more about this. Now the retrieve credential screen. It's just a placeholder for now, we'll work with it later. And scan of a screen contains an oversimplified standard Android code for obtaining the camera permissions. Press pause if you want to have a detailed look, or otherwise you can just trust me that it will display the content composable once the permissions are granted by the user. Let's run our app to see how it currently looks like. So for now it's just a screen with a scan credential offer button, and when we press the button we get to another screen that asks for camera permission, and when we grant them it just does nothing else. First thing we need to do is to initialize our SDK. You need to do this before performing any other operation with the SDK. Let's write a simple code just here in onCreate, but in a real app you'll probably want a bit more reliable mechanism of doing this, because you obviously want to avoid reinitialization on each configuration change. In the set of parameters you can see an activity. Yeah, it's needed for some calls that may require biometric authentication of the user. Then the instance ID. Saying simply, it's like a user ID for the apps that can support multiple users. Then a flag that defines if the user authentication, such as a fingerprint, will be required when initializing. Remember, we have an accent on security. And lastly, the logs configuration that can help you with debugging. You can read more about the function parameters in our SDK documentation. Link is at the usual place. The only required parameter is activity, so let's keep it simple today. Now let's go to our scan of a screen and let's write a bit of boring code for our QR scanning. We'll use a third-party lib for that. Please feel free to use the most convenient solution for you to scan the QR code. At the end, you just need the decoded QR that will be the credential offer in our case. Let's define a callback function that will be called when the QR is scanned. Just once again, we have an offer string parameter that we will pass to the function once the QR is decoded. And the QR contains the string. We don't have to do any additional processing. Now defining a few variables that we will use. Now let's define what will happen when the QR is scanned. Just calling our callback and finishing scanning. Also setting a flag for UI. Now let's make it start scanning QR codes when the screen enters the composition and stop scanning when the screen leaves the composition. And here the actual UI goes. Let's show the scanner until the code is not scanned and the loading UI once it was scanned. This spinning wheel will be shown while we're waiting for a response from the backend. So let's have a look at what we have in the app by this moment. This time I'm running on a bit older device to show you how the biometric authentication works, because on newer models we cannot capture it with the screen recording tools. So I'm tapping my fingerprint to unlock the storage and to initialize the SDK with a fingerprint scanner. It's unlocked, just this easy, and pressing scan credential offer and scanning the QR code. So yeah, it started loading, or indicating that it's loading, but it's actually not, because we haven't implemented any functionality in the callback function yet. So let's just do it. Now let's define a variable that shows the retrieved offer details. We will place it as a global value in static memory, but you will probably want to store it somewhere in your data layer or in the view model. Now is the interesting part. We will call the discover credential offer function from the SDK to send a request to the credential issuer sharing the offer details. Add in a simple exception handling in case there are troubles during the call, such as network issues. And when we receive the offer, we will navigate back to the main screen, where we are going to show most of the info. Let's have a look at the structure of the object that we received. It holds a lot of interesting data about the offer, and one of its purposes is to let you display the information about the offered credentials to the user to get their consent. Issuer and credentials fields will be probably the best option for this use case. So let's do it. We will display the offered credentials info on the screen. We're making a simple solution and just displaying the document names and types, but you can also consider it reasonable to display the offered document fields such as name, photo, or driver's license number. Let's see how our app looks like now. Here we go. So it looks the same yet, but when we scan the offer, it actually loads, and yep, it shows us the information about the issuer, name of the document in a human readable format, and the registered type of the document. Cool. Once the user has received the offered digital document, they should be able to give a consent for credential retrieval. Let's add a consent button that will be displayed along with the discovered offer. Now let's set the logic to our button. So when it's pressed, we take the offer object that we received in the previous call and make a request to the server for receiving a credential. We're going to do a network call, so we'll execute this in a coroutine. We'll also add some simple exception handling in case there's a network error. Now let's call retrieve credentials function to retrieve the credentials. Take note that calling this function will redirect the user to the authorization server to verify their identity, and will also require a biometric authentication when adding a credential to the storage. As you can see, we're passing the OpenID for VCI values, so the authorization server can correctly resolve our request. Auto Trust Mobile Credential IACA means that we won't check the issuer's digital certificate. You can read about this setting in more detail in our SDK documentation. Now let's call the function when the button is pressed. Yep, looks good. Retrieve credential result function returns us a list of retrieve credential result objects. It's a list because more than one document can be offered at the same time, so with this function you can receive many documents in just one call. In our case, we're going to receive just one document, but please keep it in mind though. Here's the structure of one retrieve credential result. It always contains the type of the document and its doc type field. This can be a value that identifies a driver's license or a passport, for example. And we have either credential ID in case everything went well for this particular document and it was successfully received from the issuer and saved on the device, or otherwise we have a received credential error if something went wrong. For example, if there was a network issue for this particular request. Credential ID is a local ID of this credential on the device. You can use it to fetch the credential from the local secure storage, for example if you want to display it to the user. We've actually already finished the issuance flow, but as a bonus, let's also have a look at how we can fetch the credential from the storage and display it on the screen. Let's start with getting a set credential from the storage. We will get a credential for each of the credential results. For simplicity, we will just assume that we fetched all of the credentials successfully. You can see that we're skipping the status check. It's a check for the credentials revocation status. You can find more details about it on MATTR Learn and in our SDK documentation. Now let's define a retrieve credentials variable and save the data there, so we can show these credentials on a different screen. As before, in a real app, you would probably use a view model or data layer for this. Let's save our data to this variable, we'll later fetch it on a different screen. Now let's navigate to the screen for showing a credential when the button is pressed. We also won't need the discovered offer anymore. So let's go to our screen that is empty yet, and let's start with creating a composable that can display digital document details. Namespace is a type alias for a string type. Let's make a preview to see how it goes. Now let's add a bit of UI there to make sure that the preview works. Nice, it works. Now let's make it look just a bit better. Cool, now let's traverse through the namespaces and add some simple UI for displaying them. Great, now we have to just show the actual claims. I want to show them on a background of a different color. Let's see how it looks like. Nice. Now for the claim values of the stored credentials, let's say for the person's actual name or driver's license number, instances of mobile credential element subclasses are used. For example, an int value would be represented as a mobile credential.int element and the string value would be mobile credential.string element. Let's define a simple mapping function of these classes to strings to easily show them with our document composable. There are elements that would require a more complex UI that we're making here, so let's skip them for now to keep the code simple. Now the only thing left is to only traverse the retrieve credentials list that we received before, map it to a form suitable for display on UI, and to actually show it by calling our document composable. Let's start with adding a simple, nice title to our screen. And the list. And yeah, let's map to a set so we can pass it. Now let's see how this beauty works. So we press scan credential of phone. We scan the QR code, see that it's loading, and here we can see the information about the offered credential. We press consent and retrieve credentials. And here we get to MATTR Labs tenant that we use for testing and demonstration purposes. Just keep in mind that here we will just generate a credential, but in your real application, the user will see something like this, something more similar to a common authorization server. So let's generate a credential. And it asks for authentication. We authenticate it, and now we can see the details of the issued credential. Again, this is a sample data, just a generated one, but in the real application, the user will be redirected to an authorization server of the real issuer, and the real credential will be sent to the device. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and that now it's clear for you how to build an Android app that can receive mobile credentials over OpenID for VCI channel using MATTR SDK. I'm inviting you to explore the MATTR Learn platform, and especially the text guide related to this video that will show you how to build this app step by step, and will give more technical details about how the things work in our SDK. And also follow to our online presentation, proximity presentation, and credentials verification tutorials. Bye!